Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Second Age Show, episode 15, in fact. And boy, do we have some more really big and massive, and just even potentially, which is going to be the main thing, interesting, or maybe is it quite confusing? Is it even a bit worrying? Who knows? But some leaks around the show, around mainly Galadriel. So I think not just to join us again for such a big episode, we have Yoiston from Men of the West, who's known as Yoiston. Hello, my friend. Great to have you on.
Hey, Fellowship of Fans. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to joining you guys for an episode, so thank you so much for the invite. I can't wait to get into it with y'all.
Yeah, and I think that you've actually come on probably what's going to be my favorite episode, just due to how much we're going to be discussing. Because we've, as you can see on screen right now, we have the most things that we can reveal in an episode probably so far. And but as usual, joining me are my two lovely co-hosts. Firstly, Kyle. Hello, my friend.
Hey, great to be here with everyone.
Indeed, and also Lakitia.
Hello, everybody. Lovely to be back.
And I think the first thing we have to get off is that, of course, the Isildur thing probably has gone. That revelation has probably dropped a bomb on a lot.
Who is that again?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It didn't get trending, but I think it did go quite wide enough, and I think just carrying on about that, then a few days later, a Brazilian source actually said that Lloyd Owen is Elendil as well, which yeah. But quickly, Justin, what is your thoughts on having Isildur confirmed by us, and now Elendil confirmed by the Brazilian Terra Media account? Well, it is of course not confirmed by Amazon, but it is looking likely. So what are your opinions when you heard this?
Yeah, so I actually I do a podcast on my Patreon with one of my buddies, and we were talking about it a couple days ago after you released it all. And what's probably the most fascinating thing is I thought that this show was going to be longer than it seems like it's going to be. If Isildur is going to be the protagonist from episode 3 of season 1 onward, I feel like this is a 2, maybe 3 season show. And from there, my co-host, he brought up the idea that potentially this might mean that they're going to see how well this show does, 2-3 seasons, try to make back their money plus more. And then after that, they could maybe produce other shows in the first or second ages, just seeing how this one does. Because it is surprising to me. I would have thought that season 1 was going to be Tar Miniatur or Elros, right? Elrond's brother, and the founding of Númenor and all of this stuff. And that seems like if we're even going to get that, it'll be either episode 1 or 2, and then maybe in flashbacks later on. Mm-hmm. So it's just fascinating in that I imagine if Isildur is already going to be the protagonist, we're starting in the late Second Age within this show, which makes me wonder, well, we've already skipped over a large swath of the Second Age, unless we see it in flashbacks told by characters such as Galadriel. So, yeah, very interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm, indeed. And I just think that what you touched upon as well is that it's so much. It would have probably been better if we did see Tar Miniatur in the mid-Second Age, because, of course, I want this news to be right, because, hell, I've heard it's a lot of stuff if it's wrong. That's basically a year and a half of work-based reputation gone if it's wrong. But personally would have preferred Tar Miniatur in the Forging of the Rings fleshed out more? 100%. And But I think seeing this late Second Age show, which is probably looks like it is going to be now, it'll be interesting to see how Amazon have tackled it, and not have they have, and they will, because we have to see how the audience, the critics' reaction is to that as well. But
yeah,
I think today's news, before we go into it, to reveal it, do you guys think that we're seeing again, it's the late Second Age, and Amazon have to invent big stuff in order to fit in the elves? I know it's really hard to not talk about it. We will go into it in a second, but I think, do you guys agree that that's potentially what we might be seeing here? Carl?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for sure. Especially with these latest leaks, I think this really firmly cements that it's the late Second Age we're looking at here.
And I just think let's just get right into it 5 minutes in. So the first exclusive, and of course, we have heard this ourselves. We've been able to confirm over a number of months. This once we're going to release Isildur, we're going to release this afterwards as well because it goes hand in hand. So it is exclusive. Galadriel will be in Númenor for at least a few episodes, and those episodes being between episode 3 to episode 8 in season 1 of Lord of the Rings on Prime. The actor playing Galadriel, Morphy Clark, which I think she confirmed in the interview herself, or she confirmed to a reporter who later reported that, so I think that's technically a actor confirmation, but we haven't got it from Amazon yet, but it's basically Morphy Clark. She was on the Númenorean sets for 3+ months, so for a minimum of 3 months. So that is the first bit of news. Joystein, as you are the special guest today, Galadriel in Númenor. Before we go into more context, just from an average, like even people watching this, you hear this and it seems like Amazon, of course they have invented it. Nothing's been said so far around Galadriel, but by talking about her in Númenor. So what does this imply?
So I think from an average viewer standpoint, this is actually kind of exciting because it'll combine the two narratives, which could have been a big problem for the Second Age. It'll combine the Númenorian story that happens very far away and the Elven story in Middle-earth. It brings both of those together. So I think from your average viewer who's seen the movies and maybe read a little bit of the books, I think this could be very exciting news. But I think from a deeper lore perspective, it will present a few problems, which we'll get into later, especially concerning the King's Men and Galadriel being one of the High Elves. But from a lore perspective, after the War of the Elves and Sauron and before the wedding of Elrond and Celebrian at the beginning of the Third Age, Galadriel and Celeborn are mostly in Ethelon, near the havens of Belfalas, in the region that would eventually be Gondor. And she doesn't really do much during the latter half of the Second Age. We can assume maybe she played some part in the War of the Last Alliance, but perhaps not. Yeah. So they took a character who was just kind of stationed somewhere out of the narrative, and they're bringing her back in. But as we'll discuss, I'm sure in a bit, there are some problems that she'll run into being in Númenor. So, but I think it's very interesting.
Indeed, and thank you for that. But Joystein, I just remembered we were meant to give it to Lakitia to.
No worries, no worries.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
No, it's my fault. It's my fault. Completely.
I can go on from here. It's nothing special. I can really go from here, and Joystein explained it perfectly. So all good.
No, just go for it though. So I think for people who don't know what Lakitia is going to do, she's going to give a quick rundown of what canonically, I know canon with Tolkien is what can you regard as canon, and I think that's a debate, but what, let's say, out of all things Tolkien has written down about Galadriel in the Second Age, Lakitia will give us a version of what he wrote about Galadriel in the Second Age. So take it away, stage is yours.
Yeah, well, as far as I can tell, this is a massive change after all. And note that Galadriel has done her fair share of traveling in the Second Age. So she traveled from Harlingen to Lake Evendim, and then on to Eregion, and then through Moria to Lindorinant, which was the early iteration of Lothlorien. And then after the War of Elves and Sauron, like Joystein already mentioned, she and Celebrian traveled back to Imladris, and then by the end of the Second Age, she had been living with Celeborn and Celebrian in Belfalas. So, she's a very well-traveled lady, but most of these journeys were done as a permanent move. We don't really know that she had at any point made short-term, but long-distance journeys. So it certainly makes me wonder what the purpose of her journey is.
Kyle, just to finish off, is this a big liberty? Well, we can't say liberty because technically it's not contradicting anything really, because Amazon, as Thomas Shippey said, I know it's quite outdated, that they are allowed to invent in some places like what happened between times of relative peace. So do you think this is a big or is it a reasonable liberty Amazon have taken?
It's hard to make that call, but as both Lakitia and Joystein have already mentioned, putting aside any lore issues that come up, there's not much that Galadriel's written as doing at that point in the Second Age. And we know for a fact that Amazon's going to have to fill in a lot of these blanks. And I mean, if the show is surrounding Numenor to begin with, then, you know, it kind of makes sense to have Galadriel go there. And we know that elves travel to Numenor, period. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch.
Indeed. And
Can I just mention something else? I think there's also, another implication. I mean, not only has Galadriel not traveled away from Middle Earth ever since she arrived there through Helcaraxe, which we will also be seeing, but this also brings her practically within sight of Valinor. So I think that has lots of implications, in and of itself.
maybe that is why we have seen that Valinor picture in episode. Well, that's said from episode 1, and maybe we're starting to connect some dots. But of course, that is only speculation. But
Oh yeah, so that could likely be just, like Galadriel sitting on top of Menel Tarma with a pair of, binoculars staring at Valinor. Oh no, but no trees. Alas.
Unfortunate. But the next bit is that Charlie Vicker's character, who we last time said was Arik, the codename was Arik, so Arik is Charlie Vickers, we said that before, will also join Galadriel from her journey from Middle Earth to Númenor. He is said to be a, quote, leader of men from presumably Eriador. So, I think, let's get into some more of the leaks before we come back again. So, and then the next bit is that Elendil, this is the first time, who is played according to Terra Media, which it is true anyways, is played by Lloyd Owen, will capture and bring Galadriel and Charlie Vicker's character to the Queen, who is Queen Miriel, after Galadriel is done fighting off 5+ Númenorean soldiers. So it looks like they have been maybe caught, captured, and of course they're gonna have to arrive by ship. Maybe it's Loda's boat. Maybe that's the thing. But because we know Loda is Elendil now. But was it starting to look like a little bit, Yoiston? So we've got now a leader of men joining Galadriel on this journey to Númenor.
I'm actually excited about that particular piece because we don't know that much about the middlemen during the years of Númenor. We know that they were there and that sometimes the Númenorians friendly with them, and then sometimes they kind of came in and conquered them. So with this, if we have this man of Eriador, likely his ancestors are related to the Edain of the First Age, so he's almost like a very distant cousin of the Númenorians. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays in with the Elven narrative in Eriador, if these middlemen really play a large part in the kingdom of Gil-galad, and how that all works. Because really, again, in the lore, it's almost as if Gil-galad has total authority over pretty much all of Eriador until the Númenorians come and found Arnor. So the introduction of these middlemen will be rather fascinating, especially if we can see the ancestry of some of the middlemen from the Lord of the Rings, right? So the ancestors of the Rohirrim, the ancestors of... we don't see the Druidine, but if we... in the Lord of the Rings movies, but if we see them the show, people like that would be really world-building and very interesting. So that one, a middleman, a normal man who lives to the age of 80 or so before passing, coming to Númenor and beholding the grandeur of the island, it would almost be an audience transplant for us as just normal people to see what the Númenorians. So I'm actually quite excited about that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And just seeing, for example, it'd be interesting to see how Amazon are going to show the difference between these Númenorians who have been colonizing Middle Earth for quite a while now, and they're even though they're maybe not at the highest glory near well power. it's quite hard to describe really late Numenor because it is kind of declining near the end due to we're going to get later on to the Kingsmen versus the Faithful, etc., and how this political divide nearly verging on civil war happens. But at the same time, the Númenóreans, after they've been in Middle Earth, no, they've been in Arda basically for around 3,000 years. So seeing, for example, just a middleman coming from Middle Earth and just showing the difference between the two would be quite interesting, and seeing if Amazon will go the lens to show the difference as well. So Carl and Kitty, I will get your thoughts on that in a second as well, but just to quickly summarize, Charlie Vickers, who is an Amazon original character, would also, we don't know the character name, will join Galadriel from a journey from Middle Earth to Númenor, and he is said to be a leader of men from presumably Eriador. And it's funny that we actually, Lakitia, talk to me about this. We're going to be seeing Galadriel fighting off 5+ Númenorian soldiers, but it looks like she does get captured in the end, along with Charlie Vickers' character. So, do you think we're seeing quite a lot of action, aren't we, over these last few episodes?
Yeah, we certainly are. I mean, I don't know, for me, the idea of, seeing Galadriel fighting off 5 Númenorian soldiers and then potentially still, ending up in trouble, that seems a little bit of a downer for me. I mean, she's Galadriel after all. But maybe I just want to address something that Euston said. I think, based on the character Eric's audition, which is a code name, of course, I think he seems a bit too cynical to be, like a wide-eyed audience stand-in.
That's fair.
I think he kind of, the audition scripts that we did get.
We will actually we'll get to it, actually. We'll do that in a bit if you. But you can summarize. But we will get to that. So,
all right.
So we will save that conversation for later, just to get through all this first. But Lakita does actually have a really, really good point that to stick around for as well. So, but Kyle, we are going to be seeing Galadriel, Elendil taking Galadriel to meet Queen Miriel. I know that rhymed, first of all, and second of all,
you're quite the poet.
Who would have thought that 3, 4, 5 months ago we'd be able to say that on the second date show? It just amuses me sometimes. So again, we're going to see Elendil take Charlie Vickers and Galadriel. So talk to me about that. What does that mean? It's quite crazy.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and as Lakitia kind of alluded to, maybe a little problematic. Galadriel is Galadriel, and if she's fighting off five guards or something like that, and still gets captured, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We saw in The Hobbit, we saw how she kind of Kamehameha'd Sauron, certainly straight out of Gol Guldur. So it'll be interesting to see if that same approach is taken to her.
Yeah, I agree, and I think when we get into a few more of these, it does seem like Galadriel's maybe not having the best of times in Númenor, but
I mean, she must be really seasick after such a long journey.
Oh, true.
And if I could interject something that just occurred to me that's very strange about this. So she comes in, fights 5 Númenorians who we can assume to be Kingsmen. And then the Kingsmen bring her to one of the faithful. That doesn't make sense. Like why wouldn't they bring her to Ar-Pharazôn or somebody like that?
That's a really good point. Maybe it does make sense, and maybe she, Elendil, or maybe this is planned, right? Like maybe this is planned.
But remember at the same time, some of this might still be under Tar-Palantir's rule, and he still didn't.
Yeah.
So far currently, I don't think the Kingsmen have been actually established yet, and they will probably be in this season. But Pharazôn is still Pharazôn, not Ar-Pharazôn. So I think we're going from Palantir to Queen Miriel. So it seems like everything is, I think, as of right now, relatively stable. But of course, truth be told, not for long. But yeah, I do really like, you always did pick up on something really funny around the little contradiction there. So yeah, maybe
Yeah.
that's going to add to the drama. Maybe imagine that they make them two friends, not make him like friends, and then they politically divide. It makes is this drama, Machiavellian politics for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah,
but
there you go.
but that's just me conjecturing something random there. So, anyways, what we need to do now is go into this bit, which I think is one of the best things we have heard. When introduced to Queen Miriel in the throne room, Galadriel proclaims her lineage, so we get to hear mention of all of the House of Finarfin. So, and this is apparently meant to be, we've been told by various sources, this is, and like from second hand, third hand as well, this does sound, it did see apparently on set was a really, for the Tolkien fans there, a really goosebumpy moment. I don't know if that's a word, but I think yeah,
It is now. It will be
Yeah.
after this.
there we go. But Kyle, what about that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think goosebumps is the right term there to hear Galadriel give a big long speech and to give her, her lineage and just, indicating she's of the house of Finarfin and to see kind of, the High Noldor go up against the High Royalty of Númenor is it'll be really, really cool to see that political interaction, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yes, please. Maybe this could even be the time and place for another flashback or something. I don't know. I honestly love the idea of Galadriel introducing, whole of her house. So
Yeah.
yay.
And it must prove, like, I'm super excited for this. It must prove something to Tar Miriel and to Elendil. But again, I also always come back to, I wonder at the state of politics within Númenor at that point. Because if even half the population didn't like elves at this point and really were almost ready to go to war against them, you have this incredible high elf who talks about her lineage going all the way to High King Finwë and all of this. And then all you would need is just one, a group of Númenorians to be like, oh, she's going to make the perfect prisoner. That's great. Like, look, she's one of the greatest of elves. So again, I just wonder about the state of politics at that time. Because that would be rather, contradictory. She says her whole lineage and then she just ends up a prisoner because she reveals herself to be very important.
I didn't even think about that because one of the other leaks is that it does seem like they are captured and imprisoned in Númenor. But I think just even for that moment, it seemed that Amazon are going to the extent to mention Galadriel's whole family lineage as well. So yeah, I hope we do. I'm really hoping for flashbacks, but we'll have to wait and see if that will be the case. So now the next thing is that Galadriel and Queen Miriel will later on, maybe this might be another episode or another few episodes later, they will give speeches to the Númenorians stacked full of lore, which is the quote. And this, so Royston, what are you seeing here? Miriel and them side by side giving these speeches to the Númenorian people.
I mean, I'm excited for it. I hope the average viewer would like it, but I imagine Tar Miriel might even go through her heritage then, or talk about those early moments in Númenor that we have that the show will have already passed. Right, them coming to the aid of Galadriel and the other elves during the War of the Elves and Sauron. Perhaps even things from the First Age. That might be the lore drop, just so we can understand the kind of context of the Second Age better. So, very excited.
Yeah. Yeah, I really agree. I think just what Joysten said, I think they'll allude to, how Númenorians have sent help before during the wars of elves and men, which could really, be a good segue into what's about to happen. So, yay.
Maybe a segue into another flashback. There you go.
Or another flashback, yeah.
Segue into another reveal. There we go.
Look at that. Smooth transition.
As the Númenorians in the late Second Age hate the elves with some sources saying mirroring potential in-story racism towards the elves. The Númenóreans don't want to help the elves, neither does Pharazôn, and Galadriel being a Númenor is a massive problem to the average, list like society and all the townsfolk higher up into probably moving into the politics of all the politicians. It does seem like the elves are not liked by this period, and I think canonically that does make sense at the same time. What do you guys think? What do you think, Carl?
Yeah, no, I agree. I've said since the beginning that the story of the tension between the Kingsmen and the faithful is going to be something that this show can really center itself around, and it looks like more and more that that's what's going to be the case.
Yoistan, so it seems like the Númenóreans don't really like the elves, so what do you think we can take from this?
Well, and see, so this is kind of what is confusing to me about Galadriel coming to Númenor in the first place, because how does she get past all of these Númenorians that would sacrifice her to Melkor later on whenever Sauron gets there? Because so I assume what's happening is she's coming to Númenor because, you know, there are orc attacks and they need the Númenorians' help because Sauron's still in Middle Earth. And then our Pharazôn at this point just says, good luck, but then hears about Sauron proclaiming himself the Lord of the Earth and taunting men, and then he decides to help, not to help the elves, but to help his ego. And then he goes over and takes down Sauron. But yeah, I don't know. This is the kind of perilous part about sending, one of the most powerful of the elves, but also one of the most important of the elves. I don't see necessarily how she would escape Númenor, but that might be where Elendil comes in, Isildur come in, and they help her make her great escape, and kind of proclaim themselves as the faithful.
Ooh,
that would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And I think I think we can partly answer some of what Yoistin said, because I haven't put it in the reveals, but we can actually reveal it that Galadriel is coming, but when she enters Númenor, she's wearing cloth, she's wearing drag, she's not in her, you know, I don't know how to say it, but her lovely elven costume. She is literally in dirty drags. It's like some garment thing, so it looks like she's maybe coming in disguise. So yeah, that's probably something new to Yoistin.
Her hands are bound.
Yeah, yeah, we heard that as well. So maybe that's a new thing. Maybe they're trying to sneak in. But I think we need to give the people some context. But this next bit is 1 second.
Can I just say something before we move on?
Go.
I really think this whole thing, you know, the elves being so hated in Númenor can make for a very dramatic setup, and will of course further the strife between the Kingsmen and the faithful. Yeah. But I still really hope both sides will be presented with some nuance, and I really hope these sort of topics will be dealt with, you know, great care. So.
Good point.
That's it.
Oh, we lost him for a second.
Podcast over.
Yeah, that's the end.
Fellowship out. Bam.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Oh my.
In Fellowship.
Oh, he said 1 sec.
Oh, he did. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My bad. Yeah, so I really hope this doesn't get, you know, too heavy. The whole elf hating stuff. That could get so black and white so quickly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and that's why I was originally so excited to see Númenor in its glory days when they were best friends with the elves.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still not over the fact that we're not getting the forging for like 3 seasons.
Yeah, which is so weird to me. I feel like they'd want to almost start with that, because that's kind of what people know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's good arguments both ways.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're just plain wrong. I'm sorry.
It's interesting though that we do seem to be going backward, right? Like we started with the Lord of the Rings, and then the Hobbit, and now we're in the end of the Second Age.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that it's playing out that way.
Yeah, that's very odd. I feel like it's maybe a marketing strategy to just make sure that people watch the show and know what's happening before we get into the new content with earlier.
Very true. Yeah.
Okay, so what we've heard is that the reason for the journey is, you know, said to be because of a continual orc attacks in Middle Earth that are affecting men and elves, and they're asking for Númenóreans' help. So it seems like she is a kind of an envoy after all, which I still feel, is a bit odd. What
Mm-hmm.
do you guys think?
And I think with Charlie Vickers' character, Lead of Men, maybe they're the two envoys from the two races coming to ask Numenor for help. Do you maybe
I don't know. He doesn't read like that to me. I mean, his
Mm.
audition tapes really don't read like he's a diplomatic envoy of any kind, or that he's even capable of being a diplomatic envoy.
Yeah,
Indeed.
Do you
his
think
presence
he could
is interesting.
secretly be working for Sauron, kind of as
Mm.
perhaps even an envoy of
Mm.
the Easterlings or
Ooh,
something like that?
Mm. Mm.
that would
Interesting.
add an interesting twist to it. Let's see if Amazon are actually maybe that bold enough to actually go for that, because that'd be
Mm.
really interesting storytelling. But do
He is
you,
talking about, getting an army to fight
yeah,
the invaders, so I think he might be trying to get Númenóreans help, like military help to fight against Sauron.
Mm.
I don't know, that could also be a camouflage, of course, but I
Mm.
don't know. To
yeah,
me, he seems genuine, but a very interesting character in any case.
indeed.
Bit of a daredevil.
And as I just quickly want to jump in here, it's a rumor because we haven't been able to confirm this part, and because it's such a big overall narrative thing, we can't confirm that. It's really hard to. So, anyways, do you see this still working? Because Yoistin, 3100 of the Second Age, the Númenóreans under Pharazôn capture Sauron, don't they?
Hmm.
Do you think?
Yeah, well, and that's. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, go ahead.
That's where I was originally wondering, but it sounds like all of this happens before
Mm-hmm.
Sauron is captured. And it would make sense that he is harassing the elves, trying to get the Númenóreans to come and capture him, so then he take down Númenor. But again, starting so late in the show, that only makes sense. You would have to wonder, oh, well, why does Sauron care so much about the Númenóreans? Why does he hate them so much? And maybe that's where Miriel explains to Galadriel that his defeat at the hands of the Númenóreans in the War of the Elves and Sauron made him have this resentment that lasted over 1,000 years, and that is what made him, just like in the lore, that's what made him want to take
Mm.
down Númenor, because he realized they were too powerful for him. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know if he's harassing the elves to start another war because he thinks he can finish them off, or if he's purposefully trying to get the Númenóreans to pretty much capture him. Because Second Age Sauron, he definitely has a lot. His strategies are a lot different than in the Third Age.
Mm.
It is almost more of this trickery, Loki kind of stuff where he's betraying people's trust. He's gaining people's trust only to let them down or only to lead them in darkness versus just conquering and destroying like in the Lord of the Rings. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm curious to see how all of that plays out, especially within these leaks.
Indeed. And I think, Kyle, do you think we can start to put maybe dots together on the rumors we've heard? Because remember, a few episodes ago we did one on battle and war leaks, and that they were fighting. Anything around that? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think some things are starting to come full circle now. We're hearing, we heard about the battles first, and now we're hearing about where we're going with the battles and kind of speculating from there. But it all kind of does seem to connect so far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe they do accept it in the end. But I think, Kyle, as you are the artist, do you want to read out the description of the throne room? If you want to do that one.
Sure. Yeah. So the description of the Queen's throne room is a massive circular room lit by real flames, huge pillars everywhere, 3 different levels, a circle of water around the central floor that flows out through an enormous arc, which opens out to a view of over the city, almost like a quasi-colosseum.
Quasi-colosseum.
Mm.
Laketia, what is this? Sounds quite grand, isn't it?
I mean, this is maybe the one thing that has me the most excited out of all the stuff we've heard so far. This honestly sounds so epic to me. I really, really can't wait to see this on the screen. To me, this seems like they're just, going all out on set design, and I think this certainly fits the opulence of the Númenórean Empire very well. So I can't wait to see this.
Yosan, is this getting you excited?
Oh yeah, I mean there are so many parallels in the lore between Númenor and Rome, because Rome took so much of the known world at that point into its empire, and Númenor started to do the same with their colonies and exploring even into Harad and Umbar and all of this. So to have so many resources, to have such grandeur, it's gonna be quite amazing to see, and then to see how Sauron twists all of that on its head. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Indeed.
Okay, so we do have some information about what Charlie Vickers' character is gonna be like. Like we talked in a previous episode, he's playing a character called Arik. And we also have the audition tapes descriptions by courtesy of Redanian intelligence. And in those descriptions, he's talking to a woman who I think could potentially be Galadriel. And they're it seems like they're having a bit of an antagonistic relationship. I will say that his accompanying Galadriel may not be a planned endeavor. It seems like, based on his auditions, it seems like he teamed up with her due to necessity. To me, he reads a lot like a very calculating type, just willing to sacrifice, his friends for his own benefit, a bit of a daredevil with some very dark humorous side. And so based on this audition, I think he could be a leader of potentially the Guathurim, whose homeland has been invaded by Sauron's forces, possibly. And he could be trying to get help from the Númenoreans. Though, why the need to travel all the way to Númenor and not just, knock on the door of a Númenorian settlement in Middle-earth and ask them for help? That's beyond me. So if his audition is anything to go by, and we still don't know for sure that it is, but it looks like his relationship with Galadriel won't be an entirely peaceful one. So I really find that interesting because we haven't really seen her in this sort of situation before.
And even looking at the dialogue here, it does look really interesting. And Yuri-san, do you think this could potentially be from this leaked when it is Arik, who we know is Charlie, because we can 100% confirm that. Now it's coincidental that he is talking to a woman where they look like they're working in a sort of duo, isn't it?
Yeah, the weirdest thought just occurred to me because of the calculating anti-hero type. I wonder, so obviously in the lore, when Sauron took on the guise of Anatar, Galadriel she didn't like him, but didn't quite know who he was until he revealed himself with the One Ring. But I wonder if Amazon kind of retcons that to some degree, and Eric is Sauron, and is Sauron in disguise, and that's why he and Galadriel don't get along. And the reason he's going all the way to Númenor, it's that kind of Tom Hiddleston Loki charisma thing that gets me. It's because, again, Sauron's a trickster in the Second Age. Perhaps they don't get along because underneath it all, he is Sauron, and he's trying to assess the defenses of Númenor. Now, that theory is probably very far out there, and I don't know if that's something they would do, but it would be a way for them to introduce Sauron very early game. But even if he's just a man of Eriador, it'll be interesting to see those relations and perhaps why they don't quite get along with the elves. I'm curious about that.
Indeed, and it does seem like these two are probably going to be seeing quite a lot of them together in season 1. But, Kyle, your overall thoughts around all this? We have got Galadriel in Númenor for at least a few episodes because she was on set for at minimum 3 months. We could say minimum for that as well. So it looks like she has been sent maybe as an envoy to try to ask for help from the Númenorians. It seems there's orc attacks in Middle-earth. And the funny thing is, this is just like one of the probably like 10 storylines. This is probably like 10% of the show as a whole. It's like probably there's so many more things happening. We've got the dwarves, we've still got all the elven things. So, but it's interesting to see that at least we're getting one starting to maybe piece stuff together. So yeah, what's your overall thoughts around this one?
Yeah, it seems to me like this could almost be the main storyline that we follow through the first season. Having Galadriel on Númenor is an interesting choice, but like I said earlier, it's there's not much that she's doing at that point that we know of in that late in the Second Age. So kind of telling the Númenor story and including her at the same time is really cool.
I just forgot to say, because the I'll say marketing for this video to come out and this premiere, I said the main character because I forgot this is one of the main points of the video. This makes her technically the main good. I know Amazon show probably won't have like a main character, but like the observer said Eldian, which we know is Galadriel, will be the main character, and it makes sense. Reese, don't you think maybe because we've got Middle Earth, we've got Númenor, they need to be connected. The character that goes and connects the two and is in both, that's the connecting point for the show, and that is Galadriel. So do you think that propels her to the main character role potentially?
I think so. I think the biggest problem with doing a second age show is how long it is, like how long the second age is, and then how many humans pass away throughout that timeline. So I imagine it almost has to be an elf, the true protagonist of the show. Now, Isildur, I imagine he's almost like the Aragorn. If we're going to the normal Lord of the Rings movies from Peter Jackson, Isildur is almost the Aragorn to Galadriel's Frodo. I imagine Galadriel is the true protagonist that connects all the dots, connects the narratives. But then Isildur is the one struggling with destiny. But absolutely, I would say, especially in flashbacks, she will probably be the audience's eyes throughout the crafting of the rings, the War of the Elves and Sauron, and so forth.
Exactly, and I think Amazon have gone this way in order to have her as one of the main characters. But I am premeditating the fact that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, "What? Why is Galadriel in Númenor? This makes no sense whatsoever." So, and I think at the same time we do have to adopt those concerns. So, Lakitia, and I think I'll extend this to all of you. What are the problems of having Galadriel in Númenor and hearing all these leaks? What are like the main things? If you look
I
at
don't know.
Kim's,
For me,
yeah,
yeah, for me, the kind of weirdest thing is that I really didn't imagine her sailing away from Middle Earth until the end of or the beginning of the Fourth Age. I think that moment when she finally boards the ship in the Grey Havens is really, really, symbolic in all sorts of ways. So if she had already taken a pretty lengthy trip towards Valinor to like several thousand years ago, I think that lessens the impact of that particular event a little bit. So I'm not so sure how I feel about that. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the elves that had been visiting Númenor mainly came from, Tol Eressëa and stuff. I don't think they had been traveling from Middle Earth to Númenor all that much. So I think having a very prominent Middle Earth elf arriving in Númenor is just, I think that's quite a big change.
And you, Sandisi, I know you were mentioning them earlier, but what are the problems potentially with this?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Lydia said. It's again the king's men. That's going to be a problem for her, and I guess that leads into that fight scene and everything. But yeah, I mean, it shows how disconnected Númenor is from Middle Earth, which kind of makes sense because the last time they were really super in contact with the elves was back right after the War of the Elves and Sauron and the time of Tar Aldarion far before that. But it does show that there is this disconnect. I do think it takes away some of the agency of the Númenorian story, because the Númenorian story is really one of mortality, what we do when we have so much power, but we still can't stop our own deaths. And for some people, that means turning against everything that they once considered to be friends and turning against things to try to claim immortality. And then the others, for people like the faithful, that is it's wisdom. It's understanding that mortality is the gift of Ilúvatar. And I think there's that whole conflict. And then Sauron comes in to really send Númenor out the door. So with Galadriel coming, it does take away some of that agency of Númenor having its own storyline. It almost shows that Númenor isn't paying attention to Middle Earth too much, and it makes me wonder why, I guess. So those are my thoughts. Yeah. It's a mix.
Do you think it was like maybe a problem for Amazon if they had just two disconnected continents for the first season? I know you could say Game of Thrones did it, but maybe it would be a bit hard, and this is the best way to do it, is like have an elf from Middle Earth, or not an elf, Galadriel, go and also while on this, Kyle, do you think maybe Elrond could have been a better choice for this role? You know, due to his cough cough history.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point worth exploring, and maybe he also does travel there. We don't know. I think the
True.
bigger issue is having Galadriel simply used as a messenger to travel to Numenor. I think I mean at this point I still have faith in the creative team, and I still think that they're making the best choices for the show. But I don't see how that you resolve this thing of Galadriel, being who she is, simply being used as a messenger for, between Middle Earth and Numenor.
Exactly, and I think
C-
yeah. So go ahead, you Stan.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I might even say that the opposite, the inverse, could have almost been maybe a little bit more realistic. Is that you send, rather than Galadriel from Middle Earth to Numenor, you send one of the faithful from Numenor, like
Mm.
Isildur or Elendil, to Middle Earth. They understand what's happening and comes back to their people. If it's Elendil, he says the elves need our help, and but no one's listening to him, no one's heeding him until it's too late. I think that could have been a possibility worth exploring as well, but I think they want to center around this Numenor more so than Middle Earth. So yeah, I don't know. I do like the Elrond idea as
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see maybe if we've not heard it so far. Maybe Elrond is a Numenor. That could be a whole possibility, but
Mm.
I think they do need some elves in Middle Earth to save some of the original ones for there as well. But I'm thinking here really is that the main thing I'm taking away from this is that we had those I'm not sure if you might not know, Euston, but we had those battle and war leaks, and we're hearing Númenorian versus Orc battles happening presumably in Middle Earth. Maybe this
cool.
could potentially be an indication that Queen Miriel accepts this. And yeah, we'll have to wait. That's just pure, just putting two and two together. But it does kind of seem that way. But I think another thing as well is that it's really nice that that leaked audition script had their woman and Eric, who is Charlie Vickers, and we found out independently that Charlie Vickers is playing a leader who is also a Numenor, is a leader of men. And maybe that's some nice, maybe potentially cross validation. That's not a word. Validation. There we go. Okay, perfect. So run through it one last time for everyone who maybe joined the stream late. Galadriel will be in Numenor for a few episodes between 3 to 8 in season, but not for episodes 3 to 8, is a few episodes in between there. In season 1 of Lord of the Rings on Prime, the actor playing Galadriel, Morphy Clark, was on the Númenorean sets for 3 months. Charlie Vickers' character, this Amazon original character, will also join Galadriel from her journey to Númenor as well, and he's a leader of men, presumably from Eriador. When introduced to Queen Miriel in the throne room, Galadriel proclaims her lineage proudly, so we get to hear mention of the House of Finarfin, and this is said to be quite a, as invented as well, goosebumpy moment. Also, the description of the Queen's throne, which is probably one of the best things on this episode. Massive circular room lit by real flames, not red flames. Huge pillars everywhere, 3 different levels, a circle of water around the center floor that flows out through an enormous arch, which opens out to a view over the city, almost like a quasi-colosseum. Then Elendil will capture and bring Galadriel and Charlie Vickers' character to the Queen, which is Tamriel, and Galadriel is fighting off 5+ Númenorian soldiers before they get captured. But then, it seems like probably in a different episode, those two actually give speeches stacked full of lore. But the Númenorians in the late Second Age, including Pharazôn, hate the elves, and it borders on potential racism towards them as well, which is quite interesting. But finally, just to give context to all this, the rumour is that the reason of this journey is said to be because of the continual orc attacks happening in Middle-earth. Because remember, Kari's village potentially gets attacked. Nazanin Bunyadi, another link there. So I didn't even think about that until now. So another thing, but that is quite a lot, which is why this is around 40 to 50 minutes long, but it's been an absolute blast. I think it has. We've discussed so much, and I just let us know what you guys think about this recent news with Galadriel in Númenor. But first of all, it's been a pleasure having you on, Yoist, from Men of the West. Thank you for coming on. It's been so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast talking to you three, and I hope we do it again soon.
Oh, totally, indeed. And also, forgot to say, all of Yoistan's links will be to his YouTube, Twitter, etc. will all be in the description below. One of the first few links. So yeah, make sure to go check him out 100%. Also, thank you, Lakitia.
This has been an absolute blast. Thank you for such a lovely conversation, everybody.
Indeed, and I think you'll be wanting to talk about this for a while as well. But
Oh, yeah.
And thank you, of course, Kyle.
Thanks very much to everyone. This has been a really, really super insightful chat. I'm really glad we got to have it.
Indeed, and I hope this just only begins the conversation around this. But thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. But until the next video, my friends, goodbye.